So thank you for the invitation of talking about the sample return missions. So this is going to be more solar system science, but this is, I think, very complementary to what is done in the PCMI. And as Guy very rightly said, this program is very transdisciplinary. So it's very interesting to investigate all the options that are available. So I just wanted to mention all the colleagues that I'm working with. I'm just not going to list them, but they'll be in the slides. And so the science that's going to be addressed with the sample return to Earth, or as I said, mostly solar system science, as the two last items here. But there are a few research topics that could be addressed which predate the formation of the solar system, analyzing samples of extraterrestrial nature, which is the context of the solar system formation, because we have in extraterrestrial samples parts that have survived the formation of the solar system, and which can help define the environment in which the solar system formed. And of course, we know that the dust is recycled all over from the ISM to planetary systems, and then sent back to the interstellar medium. So this is something that's certainly interesting to address. In terms of formation and evolution of the solar system, we can look into the early formation, the protoplanetary disk stage, trying to understand its composition, structure, dynamics, and what's very important for us, I think, is the chronology of the formation of the materials. Then the planet start to form, and there are residuals of this formation, the small planetesimals, which are still stored in the asteroid belt. And then we can look into the evolution of the interplanetary matter, so in the interplanetary space, so both for minerals and organics. Since we are on Earth, this is something that I think is important to consider, is that the Earth as a special place can also be looked at. We are, of course, interested to know what were the bricks that were used to build the terrestrial planets in terms of composition, and also what was the early evolution of these bricks. And then we know that on Earth, probably the volatile and the organics were brought to Earth after the formation of the Moon, which probably played a very important role in the formation of the atmosphere and the emergence of life. So these are broadly the research topics that can be addressed by the investigation of extraterrestrial samples. So before really addressing the sample return, I want to mention that we have on Earth many extraterrestrial samples, which are also of value, and which are meteorites and micrometeorites. So you'll see that in all the presentation, I will go back to complementarity, because you can't just analyze one sample completely outside the context of other analysis, which have to be also smaller scale or larger scale. And I think this fits very well with the main structure of PCMI, because it's also very transdisciplinary. So going back to what I was saying, the meteorites and micrometeorites are the samples that we collect on Earth. They provide a wide sampling of material, but we are not sure of the parent body. So this is a drawback. Using telescopes, you can make remote observations at the large scales with rather large uncertainties, but then you can investigate much further away bodies or disks or stars. The spatial missions provide in situ analysis that you can do on specific bodies, and they can also return samples from small bodies. So this is very interesting, because then you know for sure the origin of the bodies, but then they are rare because they are very difficult to do and very expensive. So I'm going to talk about it. But this, just to focus on the fact that in France, we have a very rich meteorite collection at the Natural History Museum. So they have a very large collection with more than 4,000 meteorites, about 5 tons. And they have more than 1,500 different meteorites, because some of them you have different parts of the same meteorites, including more than 500 falls. Falls means meteorites that you've seen fall on Earth and that were recovered immediately. So they didn't suffer from weathering on Earth. So of course, Orgueil is the star of the collection, which is the meteorite from the class CI, which is the reference of all studies because it's matched the best the composition of the solar photosphere, so the composition of the initial solar system. And they also have Martian meteorites and other kinds of meteorites, which are also very interesting to address all the topics of solar system science. There is also a very impressive collection in the south of France, in Aix, that they recover and they actually sample meteorites in dry deserts. There is also a large resource of micrometeorites in France, so cosmic dust, which is collected mostly now in Antarctica. So by us in Orsay, so at IGC Lab, which was CSNSM before. And so these studies were initiated by Michel Moret like 3 decades ago. And these collections contain both particles that we think come from asteroids, but also particles that come from comets, and in particular ultracarbonaceous particles, which are very unique and probably of cometary origin. There is a collection of larger particles from Ceres again, but since they are larger, they are mostly melted, but they give access to larger particles. Of course, other samples are available through collaborations or requests from Japan and the US. So why do we need sample return since we have so many extraterrestrial samples already in our collections? So in this figure, you can see that there is a study in reflectance of the nature of the asteroids. So here you see the asteroids and then the density and all different characteristics. And you mainly have 3 types of asteroids. You have rocky and metallic asteroids, hydrated asteroids, and icy asteroids. And from the main 2 families, we think that we have meteorites that provide a partial sampling of these asteroids. So the dry meteorite probably samples some of the rocky and metallic asteroids. The aqueously altered meteorites probably sample some of the hydrated asteroids, but we don't know if we have in our collections samples that represent icy asteroids. Maybe from the cosmic dust collections that I just talked about, the micrometeorites collected in Antarctica and the IDPs that are collected in the stratosphere by NASA. And they seem related to the carbonaceous chondrites, so the meteorites, which are probably related to the hydrated asteroids. But there is no similarity. And so for the moment, we don't know how to firmly relate the meteorites and the cosmic dust that we have on Earth to the asteroids that we see in the asteroid belt. So I will talk about the sample return from Hayabusa 2 and OSIRIS-REx, which have and will provide samples from the icy asteroids. And the need for sample return is also given by the fact that fairly recently, a new classification for meteorites was found, which is different from the one I just presented, separating carbonaceous and non-carbonaceous group. You see that in this classification, given classes of meteorites, the iron meteorites, for instance, can go in the non-carbonaceous group or in the carbonaceous group. And so this had been seen a while ago from isotopic measurements, has been confirmed from another isotope systematics recently. And so we now understand less how these bodies, these meteorites formed, and where they come from. This is important, has important implications, in particular for the formation of terrestrial planets, and it could actually explain why the terrestrial planets are so small, because a scenario to explain this difference between these non-carbonaceous and carbonaceous chondrite-like samples would be explained by a very early formation of Jupiter, like 50 Earth mass in 3 million years, that would actually prevent mixing from the reservoir, which was close to the sun, and the reservoir which was a bit further from the sun. So this would explain why the Earth and the terrestrial planets formed from the material that was actually inside the orbit of Jupiter, and why they are so small. So for this, we need samples from more asteroids, from bodies that are known, and of course we still need coordination with observations and modeling. So another aspect why we need sample return is the fact that high precision and high sensitivity analysis are not possible in situ during space missions, and they're only possible in laboratories on Earth. So we need to go to small bodies that escape planetary formation, of course. So this is an image of the solar synchrotron here, and to see, this is a transmission electron microscope, Titan, and this is the nanosims. So these are instruments that, of course, you cannot fly on a spatial mission. So now I'm going to present you what the status of what we have in terms of sample return. So we have actually the first samples that were brought back were from a comet by Stardust. And we hope that a future mission would be selected to bring back a frozen sample of comet. And there are a few missions from asteroids which have been or planned, have already returned samples or will return samples. So this is just to illustrate for comets. The exploration of comets started a while ago with the Giotto and Vega missions. The sample return of Vil2 comet was launched in 2004 and brought back samples in 2006. And the Rosetta mission, of course, happened in between 2014 and 2016, but was only in situ mission because sample return was first planned, but then the mission was descoped, and then instead of bringing the samples back to the lab, they brought back a lab to the comet. But still, it was limited by what you can do in a spatial mission. So in January 2006, this is the Stardust collector that brought back samples from the comet. It was flown in the comet tail of Vil2 at 6 kilometers per second. So the oops, something moved. The aerial surface is here. This was supposed to be the white dashed line here. And so what happened is that since the aerogel is very insulating, thermally insulating, the samples exploded in the aerogel, and then mostly only the coarse grain minerals survived as the red dots here at the end of the tracks. But it already gave a lot of information, and namely the fact that there were high temperature mineral phases in these samples, like refractory inclusion, like the one you see here, and a fragment of chondrule. So these are both phases that are very typically found in carbonaceous chondrites. And we know that they form at temperatures higher than 1500 K. So they form at really high temperatures close to the sun. And Don Brownlee, the PI of Stardust, said that they found fire in ice because, of course, in a comet. And so this was an additional hint that radial mixing was needed in the protoplanetary disk. Of course, this was already seen by the fact that crystalline silicates were observed in the Hale-Bopp comet a few years about the same time or a few years before. And the fact that there is a similarity between these components found in the comet and what is found in the carbonaceous chondrites led to the fact that maybe there is a continuum between asteroids and comets. And if you look at the picture of the main belt, so this is a picture of the asteroid belt, you see that there is a whole range of types that you can observe as a function of the distance from the sun. And contrary to what was thought before, pretty much all types are represented at all different distances. Of course, if you go further away, only the hydrous and opaque rich asteroids are present. So this has interesting implications for understanding how the some solar system formed and what was the architecture of the asteroid belt at the beginning, how organics and water could be brought on Earth. And again, to understand this, a coordination is needed between the analysis of return samples, extraterrestrial samples, modeling, and astronomical observations. So just to highlight the fact that concerning this need for coordination, so return samples, you see that the blue lines here are the C-type. You can find them pretty much everywhere, and Hayabusa 2 mission has return sample from a C-type asteroid. S-type asteroid have been returned by the first Hayabusa mission. And OSIRIS-REx will return also samples from carbonaceous asteroid in so the B-type in about 2 years. In terms of astronomical observations, GWST will launch soon. So this is in addition to what is already done in this topic. And then modeling, of course, is very active. So now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the different missions that have returned samples. So Hayabusa, well, first samples returned from an asteroid in 2010. So this was an S-type asteroid, Itokawa, here. And the mission actually was not completely successful. They thought maybe they failed, but very small particles were retrieved from the canisters. And you see, you can look at the particles here, which are looked at with a scanning electron microscope. And they are coarse grain particles with mostly olivine, pyroxene, silicates and sulfides. And the analysis showed that they're related to a type of ordinary chondrite, which is one of the most abundant type of meteorites in the collections. The Hayabusa 2 mission is, so I'm giving the mission floor because we're working on it now, so it's very exciting. So it was launched in 2014, and the mission worked perfectly on schedule, and really it was a great achievement. So they did actually two sampling, one before and one after releasing an impactor to create an artificial crater. And the samples were returned to Earth in December 2020. So now there is a curation of 6 months. There was a curation of 6 months, and then we started analyzing the sample in last July. So here are a few pictures of the recovery of the capsule. So the samples are in here. And So as I said, they completed 2 touchdowns, and then the initial analysis are now in progress. And it's also a big success for the French community because many French scientists are involved in this initial analysis. So it's actually they actually collected more samples than they expected. So this is currently in progress, and I can't tell you anything. So OSIRIS-REx is the next mission that will bring back samples from asteroid Bennu, which is a type B. So this will be very interesting because it will be complementary to the analysis of Hayabusa 2. It's really great to have 2 sample return about at the same time. And they actually collected a lot of samples. They say maybe a few kilograms. So that's a lot, and that will allow analysis that are destructive. And so the sample analysis will start in 2023, end of the year. There is also a mission that is planning again by JAXA, so the Japan Space Agency. The Japanese scientists are very active in returning samples. So they're planning to bring back samples from Phobos, which is a moon of Mars. And there is actually 2 scenarios. Either Phobos is a captured asteroid by Mars, or it's a moon that was formed by an impact. So bringing back samples will help decide between these 2 scenarios. So the study of these samples will help understanding the formation of Martian moons or understanding better the dynamics of asteroids from the main belt. I also added, because of the context of this workshop, a figure representing the composition of interstellar dust that was measured by CDA on Cassini, and also samples that were brought back by the Stardust mission, because they exposed at some point the collector in the direction of the interstellar dust flux. And you can see on this figure that, and this is compared to the composition of pre-solar grains. So these are grains which are extracted from meteorites based on isotopic anomalies. So it's a biased approach because we only select grains which are isotopically anomalous, but we know that these grains are of pre-solar origin, so interstellar. And you can see here that there is so far no carbon-rich grains that have been identified by CDA Cassini. But in terms of pre-solar grains, there are of course graphite and silicon carbide grains. But the most abundant pre-solar grains, even in meteorites, are silicates. And you see that in this diagram, the composition of these silicates is not stoichiometric, and as expected, because it's amorphous. So there is a range of composition, but so far no precise composition. So to conclude briefly what I just said, I think you understood that I am in favor of coordination different approaches. So return samples provide rare samples from well-identified parent bodies. So that's very, very precious because it really gives the opportunity to say something about parent bodies that we can see from the ground, and that we know from their reflectance spectra, for instance. The sample return give unique opportunities for laboratory analysis, so high sensitivity, high resolution analysis for the comprehension of the solar system science. So for the astrophysical context of the solar system formation, for the formation and evolution of the early solar system, and also for a better comprehension of the Earth, understanding of the Earth, in terms of formation and also extraterrestrial input of volatiles and organics. But I think what's really important is that you can't just analyze sample returned by itself. You need to coordinate with other analysis from other extraterrestrial samples and also with astronomical observations and modeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Cécile. So, are there any questions? Okay, so I have some questions. The first is more a comment. I think it's very interesting what you said about the fact that the presolar silicates are mostly non-stoichiometric.
Yeah.
So this is a piece of information that we are not taking into account in cosmic dust models, which are all considering like amorphous olivine or pyroxene grains, so stoichiometric in composition. Maybe there is some work here that could be done to work on analogs that are non-stoichiometric.
Mm.
And I have another question about the delivery of organics on Earth. So you said it was after the moon formation. So they are delivered by comets, I guess, and meteorites.
Yes.
Is there a way to know if this organic matter is pristine, presolar, interstellar? Since you said at the end of your talk that presolar grain are mostly silicates and not carbonaceous.
Yes. I think the input of organics and volatiles happened probably since the formation of the solar system, but the moon forming impact probably resetted a lot of the atmosphere for the Earth. So we think that the most valuable input in terms of volatiles and organics for the formation of the oceans and the formation of Earth happened after the moon forming impact, and probably gave a different composition of what was there before from the degassing of the samples that brought, the material that actually made the Earth. And this was, comet or asteroids, we don't know. It was extraterrestrial material, probably a mixture of both. At the time, the solar system was still very dusty. The constraints we have now come from cosmic dust samples, which probably the models predict that they come from 80% from comets. But they show also similarities with carbonaceous chondrite matter. So that goes back to the possible existence of this asteroid comet continuum. And in terms of presolar grains in the meteorites, the most abundant presolar grains that we identified from the isotopic anomalies. I want to stress that because we may be biased in that way. The only way we can identify them is because they have an isotopic composition which is completely incompatible with the solar composition. So these ones, yes, they are dominated by silicates. So the compositions are usually non-stoichiometric. A few of them can be olivines. And then you have other silicon carbides or graphite. But I don't think amorphous carbon has been found. And you also have nanodiamonds. And the way we can identify them is by the isotopic anomalies. So in hydrogen or carbon or oxygen. I don't know if that answers. I don't remember the end of your question.
Yeah, that's answering my question. So if there is no other question, thank you again, Cécile.